There are many forms of survival, but none more poignant than a child saved from a life of despair and indignation. That's exactly what happened to Wendy Babcock, once a child prostitute who was saved in her darkest hour. Our Darryl Konynenbelt tonight with her story.
How are you?
Good.
The university life.
I need to learn everything from scratch.
A time of learning new things and constantly looking to the future. But for this student, Wendy Babcock, it is her once troubled past that is inspiring her future.
It wasn't something that, I woke up and I said, when I grow up, I want to be a sex worker. It's my goal. I'm going to work for it. I'm going to study hard. I'm going to be a sex worker. And I didn't want to do sex work.
But alone, innocent, and without any support, Wendy turned to a job that didn't have any prerequisites.
I did sex work as a way to be able to put food on the table. I lied about my age. It gave me enough money to buy groceries, and it gave me enough money to pay for bus fare. I just wanted to live.
Tell me about your first job.
It was an out call, so they drove me to a place in Mississauga. I went to the motel, lost my virginity that night.
At 15 years of age and for $75, an escort agency initiated Wendy into a trade that would define the rest of her life.
Run Young, Wood Street's this way. This is where I did some in-call work.
This was Babcock's block.
You're escorting men, take them out for dinner.
And it was on these streets where she learned the business.
I first started out wearing really fancy clothes.
Like what?
I was practically buying prom dresses. That's what they look like. They're really fancy dresses, like evening gowns and stuff.
Really?
And then I learned that I had to start wearing business suits, because you'd go to like a lawyer's office or you'd go to a doctor's office and they'd want to, their lunch hour nooner.
This was her life for a year until Wendy got pregnant. She stopped doing sex work, struggled financially, fell into poverty, and eventually lost custody of her son.
What age was he?
He was about 3. He's 11.
And you want him back?
Yeah. I've done a lot of work to better myself, both financially and as a mother, that I could look after him.
To win her son back, Wendy is doing what many would consider impossible. She's going to law school. Not just any law school. Wendy has been accepted into one of Canada's best.
It's clear that Wendy is not your typical law student.
Osgood admitted Wendy as a mature student. Professor Bruce Ryder says Wendy's life experience and work in the community trumped her lack of academics.
Wendy's facing financial challenges. She has other things going on in her life, and it makes sense for her to ease into the demands of the first year of law school, which is notorious for being the most difficult and stressful.
Wendy's dream? To become the lawyer that will change the child welfare system.
My other motivation is reforming the child welfare laws that allows children to be let go at the age of 16. Over 50% of child sex workers have been involved in child welfare, and the average age for them to start is between 16 and 18, which coincidentally is the age that kids get aged out of the system. I remember when I was a little kid, I thought, if I ever have a child, I'm never going to allow them to go through what I went through, ever.
What's your biggest fear at this point?
Not being able to afford it, not being able to finish it.
So what are you doing about it?
My friends threw a fundraiser for me a couple weeks ago, which brought in some money. One of my friends put up a PayPal site on the internet, which has also brought in some funds. I'm working.
So you're trying to raise some money?
Yeah.
What do you do now for work?
Harm reduction. I'm a harm reduction worker. I work with sex workers and drug users.
That was after her best friend, who was still in the sex trade, was murdered.
I remember reading about them in the paper, and then the next murder was Leanne Pham, who I used to work with.
And so when you looked at that, what did you say to yourself at that time?
This has to end.
I don't understand why you would still advocate for something that did such harm to your life.
It didn't do harm to my life. I believe the system put me in a position where I had no choice but to work for an exploitive agency. There's agencies out there that aren't exploitive. But unfortunately, because of my age, I didn't have the option of working for those agencies.
Wendy survived, And now she's determined to help other girls do the same.
For the first time in my life, I have a lot of hope for myself and I have a lot of confidence in my abilities to be able to accomplish my goals.